It's either a rabbit or a pedophile. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please do subscribe. And if you're old here, hello again. This case is, oh my god. I don't even know exactly how to introduce it. It is a solved double murder, potential serial killer, but all in all, it's just something that you absolutely have got to hear about. So much so that I actually have two disclaimers for you. First off, there is so much information on this case. I did try and whittle it down to just the necessary information. I tried to structure it in a way that makes sense, and hopefully it does, but if there's anything that doesn't quite make sense, pop it in the comments and I'll try my best to clear that up for you. Secondly, I'm going to put a bit of a trigger warning out there. This case is just so dark, so there are references to physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. There's a lot of violence. It's just very dark, so if that's something you're not quite comfortable with, maybe click off this one. But for the rest of you, grab a drink, because you'll probably need one, but let's get into it. This is the case of Kenneth Countie and Michael DeLoge, but in order to get to their cases, I have to introduce you to a woman we call Sheila. So Sheila was born Sheila K. Bailey in Alabama in 1958, and she was the youngest of 6 kids. As a young child, she was physically and psychologically abused by her father and sexually abused by her father and a family friend. So her life got off to a very rocky start. Like she wasn't exactly given the best chance. But despite this, on New Year's Eve in 1981, Sheila got married to John Baxter. And John had a daughter from a previous relationship. Now, after only 6 weeks of marriage, John found out that Sheila had been keeping John's daughter locked up in a closet-sized room during the day when he was at work. I don't know how exactly he found out, but like this, can you imagine? That's not even just a red flag, that's just an instant like, get the F out of my life. And luckily that is how John received that. He got out of there as quickly as he possibly could and divorced her ass. Sheila then moved to Chattanooga and started a new life with her new husband, Ronnie Jennings. And their marriage was also just not great. In fact, during their marriage, Sheila was placed in a psychiatric ward after a suicide attempt, and she actually claims that while she was there, she was sexually assaulted by an orderly. But just according to Ronnie, she just wanted everything her way. She just didn't care about anybody but herself. Ronnie actually told his mom at one point that he once lay awake at night in fear that his wife would kill him with the scissors. Now, I'm not sure exactly what made him think that. That's a very specific fear to have, but my guess is that she threatened him in some way or something like that. But yeah, not exactly a great way to live. She ended up having an affair, and then eventually, after 4 years of marriage, they went their separate ways. Now, Sheila wasn't really the type to stick around and be sad about something, so in 1987, she moved to Epping, New Hampshire, and she moved in with a man called Wilfred Labarre. Now, Wilfred kind of goes by Bill, so when you hear me saying Bill, this is who I'm talking about. But she moved in with him after responding to his personal ad. And he was this wealthy, well-off man who had done really well for himself in life. He was a chiropractor, he had his own office, and he also owned a $1 million horse farm. So he was doing well. Luckily, he had the sense not to marry Sheila, but she did actually take his name. So she was now known as Sheila Labarre. My guess is that she did this as part of a ploy to kind of gain a bit of power in the neighborhood, in the town. You know, like it might create the rumor that maybe they were married or romantically involved, and he had all this money, and with money comes power, and you know, that's what it seems like to me anyway. But obviously she wasn't actually married to him, so in 1995, 8 years later, she got married to Wayne Ennis. I'll put resources down below if you want to look into this a bit more, but I just want to kind of do a quick overview of who this Sheila person was. But yeah, so in 1995 she got married to Wayne Ennis, and this was also not a happy marriage. Sheila had actually filed complaints to the Hampton District Court claiming that Wayne tried to force her car off the road and that he kicked her and punched her in the face and all this stuff. Whether or not these things were true, there was obviously a lot of tension and conflict in the marriage, and it just wasn't a good time. Because Wayne actually came forward afterwards and said, no, she was the abuser, and to be honest, with what I've seen, I do believe him. He also said she hit him, shoved him, fired guns at him, often refused him access to the telephone, and sometimes would even lock him outside overnight during the winter. But because she was the one that was filing the complaints, she actually got a restraining order against Wayne, and yeah, their marriage also broke down. Surprise, surprise. So over these years, Sheila had stayed in contact with Bill Labarre, Wilfred Labarre, Bill. But there were rumors that she had chased him down with a gun. And on another occasion, she actually asked Wayne Ennis, who was now her another ex-husband, to murder Bill. And she had also told Wayne that she had thought about strangling Bill herself. Obviously, Wayne was terrified to say no to Sheila because he was afraid of her, and he thought that if he refused her that she might turn on him. But he also didn't want to say yes because he wasn't a murderer. He was not a human capable of taking another person's life. He was a normal person. And luckily Bill's daughter had seen right through Sheila's whole charming act, because despite all these facts, she was actually like quite a charming person. People liked to be around her, obviously until they got into these more intimate situations with her, and that's where she would show her true colors. But yeah, Bill's daughter saw right through her little charming act, and she actually got a restraining order against her to keep Sheila away from her dad, Bill. So fast forward to 1998, Sheila had a new boyfriend called James Brackett, and after not too long, she was charged with second-degree assault after she allegedly stabbed him in the head with the scissors. But eventually this case was dropped because the police termed it a lover's quarrel. What? How was this woman getting away with all this? I feel like if I chase someone down with a gun, or asked somebody to murder someone else, or assaulted people, or any of these things that she's done and gotten away with, I would have been put away, at least for some time. Like, how was she getting away with all of this insane behavior? It really does feel like one missed opportunity after another, and it's honestly quite heartbreaking, because if she had been put away for any of these things, I wouldn't have to do this video. But in the year 2000, Bill Labarre actually passed away at the age of 74. So he was actually a bit older than Sheila, because at this point she was 42. And somehow, Sheila ended up inheriting Bill's $2 million estate. Don't even ask me how. I have no idea how she managed to do this. Like I said, Bill had a daughter, and that daughter was convinced that Sheila had pulled this off through extortion and threatening his life and his property. So Bill Labarre's cause of death was actually a massive heart attack, and I know a lot of people have serious suspicions around his death, and I do as well. There were definitely rumors going around that she had poisoned him, and if she did poison him, it might have even looked like a massive heart attack, so I'm just saying. And she definitely benefited from his death, so it definitely would make sense, but this was never confirmed. Okay, little anecdote. This part isn't exactly necessary for the case, but it's definitely something that you need to know to understand the type of person Sheila was. After Bill died, obviously Sheila was now living on his horse farm, and this is when she started just irritating the crap out of the police. So she would constantly call them, fax them, write letters to them, sometimes show up in person. over just like minor complaints in the neighborhood, and it just like started really bothering the police, obviously, particularly because she would do this when she was feeling, let's call it, lonely, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. And she would give them an eyeful of herself in various states of undress and an earful of sexual innuendos. So she was just like having a great time. And obviously after a bit of time, the police just were so worn out with this woman that they were like, just started to cool off a bit. And I'm thinking, maybe it was a bit strategic, you know? Oh, I'm just gonna irritate the police to the point where they don't want to deal with me anymore. Kind of seems like a pretty decent plan if you're trying to get away with stuff that I'll get into. Maybe she just wanted love. No. But she was, of course, still with her boyfriend James Brackett, and she continued to abuse him. She actually knocked him down with her car in 2002, and in 2003 she scratched and gouged his face and shot a gun at him. I'm guessing at some point this guy James left. I didn't actually definitively see that they broke up or anything, but I didn't see any more information about him after that, so I'm guessing that he just got out of there. But how was she still a free woman? Like, she had done all of this stuff and gotten away with it all. And just her neighbors then often reported a lot of young men coming over to live there or to work there, and she had a very high turnover rate. And these men would often be seen leaving beaten or bloody. I really just think that this woman had these psychopathic traits. Like, she was very charming, she could use that to lure them in. She just didn't care what she did to these poor men that either just wanted a place to live or employment. And one or two of these men even vanished, so that seems a little sketchy to me. I couldn't even find details of these people, and that'll make sense when I get into the next part, why no one was coming looking for them. That'll all make sense in a little bit. So now I'm going to talk about Michael DeLoge. I really did want to gather more information about the victims in this case and kind of pay tribute to them in a way, but there really wasn't that much information out there. Just so you know, this is Michael DeLoge, and in 2004 he was actually in a homeless shelter. He had developmental disabilities and was clearly a very vulnerable person. So one day this woman walks in, and her name was, you guessed it, Sheila Labarre. And she took particular interest in Michael. She offered him a place to live, and all she asked for in return was sex. So obviously he was thinking happy days. Like, he had been homeless. He had now a place to live. He had this supposedly attractive, funny, interesting, charming woman interested in him, and she wanted to have loads of sex with him. When Michael did move in with her, they spent a lot of time doing drugs and a lot of time studying sadistic material. That can't be a healthy combination. But things weren't all unicorns and rainbows. Sheila would also beat Michael, sometimes in front of other people. She loved the fact that she could humiliate him like that. And because he was such a vulnerable target, she even managed to manipulate him into thinking that his mother allowed him to be abused as a child. And because this is now what he believed, he cut all ties with his mother. So Sheila was just this master manipulator who could tweak any situation to the way she wanted it. She somehow knew how to create false memories in another human's mind, which was insanely worrying, and this is how she used that ability. But unfortunately, that's not where things ended. Over time, things really did escalate, and at one point Sheila's neighbor had spotted Michael walking down like a snowy dirt road, and he was in a very bad way. Like, a very bad way. He was limping, and there was blood gushing from his head from where Sheila had sliced his ear. So when he eventually got to limp past this neighbor, all he did was whisper, Sheila. He was losing a lot of weight as well, until one day in 2005, he just disappeared. Okay, I'm gonna put a pin in that point of the story for a few minutes and move on to Kenneth Countie. Kenneth, or Kenny, was 24 years old, but he had a form of autism and was said to have the mental capacity of a 12-year-old, and he had a very like childlike trust. So naturally he was quite a vulnerable target. He had tried out this like singles phone chat line thing, and through that he met Sheila Labarre. At this stage, Sheila was 45, and on Valentine's Day in 2006, they actually met up in the Ashworth Hotel in Hampton, New Hampshire, and very soon after that, they moved in together. I'm talking days. Kenny was in the habit of calling his mother every day. Now, his mother's name was Caroline Lodge, and basically they were just really close. Like, he always kept her in the loop with what he was up to, particularly since he had moved out earlier that year, but that soon stopped. And she grew very concerned because it was not like him to ever not be in contact. And only 10 days after Sheila and Kenny first met, Caroline filed a missing person report. So she obviously had had some reason to be very concerned. And we actually have that reason. That reason is because Sheila actually called Caroline and said to her, he's effing 24 years old and that she needs to leave him the F alone. But Caroline couldn't contact him herself, so she was just very concerned. He couldn't actually take care of himself on his own, so she was really not sure if he was getting the right kind of care and attention that he needed. So luckily the police did look into this. They went to Sheila's house and, surprisingly enough, found Kenneth in good condition. He was healthy, he had no injuries, he was all good. So they let Caroline know. Now, there were reports of a phone call being made from Sheila to her sister Lynn. Sheila made some serious accusations on this phone call. She ranted about how Kenny had demonic eyes and that she was scared for her safety, and accused him of being a pedophile. So on the 17th of March 2006, so this is all just happening over a matter of days, Sheila is seen pushing Kenny through a Walmart in a wheelchair, and he has loads of scratches and cuts on his face and burns on his arms. It's like, why was he in a wheelchair? Was it for like a facade? Like, he had autism, like he wasn't physically disabled, he could walk. But then I'm making that argument and then I'm thinking, could he walk? Like, obviously he was being very badly abused. Like, had she done something so that he actually couldn't physically walk? I don't know, like this case, it's just like, oh. He also supposedly looked quite sickly, like a yellowish greenish color, and he was very quiet. Like, he kept his head down, like he would only respond to Sheila and nobody else. But because Sheila was then causing a bit of a ruckus in the store, the police were actually called on her to remove her from the shop because she was just being all like defensive and being verbally aggressive with other customers and stuff like that, and they were just like, we need to get this woman out of here. So the police did arrive and removed her from the Walmart. But unfortunately, this was the last time Kenny was actually seen in public. A few days later, Sheila was driving around the area and asking people if they had seen Kenny, because he was supposed to be feeding the animals on her farm that day and he just wasn't there to do it. But nothing really came of that. And then on the 23rd of March 2006, so again only a couple more days later, Caroline Lodge, Kenny's mother, filed another missing person report. She'd had yet another worrying phone call with Sheila, who basically said that Kenny was on his way home to Massachusetts and Kenny never showed up at home. So she was kind of like, where is my son? Like, and if Sheila's being true to her word and doesn't know where he is, and he hasn't told me where he is, then where is he? But if she's not being true to her word and she does know where he is and she's not telling me, where is he? Because obviously something was wrong. So at 1 a.m. on the 24th of March, so bear in mind this is only a couple of hours after Caroline reported Kenny missing, Sheila called the police and played a very disturbing audio tape for them. On this tape you can hear Sheila like shouting at Kenny and accusing him of raping several children, and you can hear Kenny agreeing with her after every sentence before what sounds like him vomiting in the background. Then there's a bit of a pause and you can hear Sheila saying to stop faking that he was sick and stop faking that he was fainting and all this kind of stuff. So this poor man was obviously being like totally abused. So at 6 p.m. the next day, the police finally showed up at Sheila's farm to conduct a welfare check on Kenny. Quick pause. The disturbing audio tape came in at 1 a.m. Kenny was already filed as a missing person. He had been seen in a wheelchair a couple of days before with injuries, burn marks on his arms, scratches and cuts on his face. And it took them 17 hours before they actually went to Sheila's farm. What? Why? Why would it ever possibly take that long? And like, even to play devil's advocate, even if Sheila wasn't the loopy one, they had just heard a man admitting to rape of several children. Someone was guilty of something. The police should have been investigating this ASAP. And when they eventually did get there, Sheila didn't really seem to be home, but they did find a burnt mattress and box spring in the front garden, so it's not exactly like it was hidden. Some yellow diesel fuel tanks and a couple of piles of hay, some of which that were actually still alight. And in one of these piles, there was a bone. Now, Sheila actually arrived home while the police were still there, and when they questioned her about this bone, all she said was, "It's either a rabbit or a pedophile." Anyway, she wouldn't allow the police to take it away, and I kind of, when I saw that detail, I was like, surely they can take it away. Like, I suppose maybe they would have needed a search warrant or something, but like, it's not like they were looking for it. They actually just stumbled upon this evidence. I don't know, I'm not exactly sure of the specific rules in that scenario, but I just found that a bit mad. But then the police left. Luckily, the next day, on the 25th of March, the police did return with a search warrant to search the exterior of the farm. And during their search, Sheila was just standing in her kitchen, covered in like ash and soot, and holding a handgun. On top of that then, she actually told the police chief and the lieutenant that she burned a pedophile. So basically she confessed. They'd already heard her accusing Kenny of being a pedophile on the audio tape, so they knew exactly who she was talking about. She then told them that he was in a bag on her farm, and they did come across a bag of human bones. They were found to be Kenny. So the police took her in for questioning, and she did comply pretty easily. She was like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll go with you. But when the lieutenant asked her if she had any more weapons, she just unzipped her pants and flashed her breast. Sorry for laughing, but like, this woman clearly had no concept of any kind of power dynamics. Like, she always just saw herself as the dominant one, no matter who she was talking to, what situation she was in. She saw herself as the one that was in control of the situation. If she wanted to flash the police officer right after she's basically being taken in for questioning for a murder, like, but obviously this kind of behavior doesn't fool the police, so he just told her like to stop that. Somehow, after this interview, she wasn't arrested. So like, I don't know how she could have gotten away with it at this point. Like maybe because they didn't have results back from evidence, but surely they could have kept her in custody or something. Like, I don't know, but she was basically let go. But the next day, the police returned with 3 more search warrants to search different parts of the farm, and when they did this, they found a lot. They found some of Michael DeLoge's clothing, they found pruning shears and hedge shears, both with burnt handles, a knife with blood on the blade, human bones and human teeth, and some older burn pits. There was also blood spatter in the kitchen, dining room, living room, 2 bathrooms, and in the bathtub. Some of the blood spatter even had layers of dust on it, so she obviously wasn't even trying that hard to hide anything. Like, it was clearly old blood splatter. She clearly just thought that she was untouchable. She kind of was, because even after this, she was not arrested. So the police left again. Sheila sorted herself out with $85,000 in cash and checks, and she hit the road. She went to a city that was about a 25-minute drive away, and she got a lift from a guy who she repaid with sex. And then in Manchester the next day, she had sex with another guy, and it's just like, I feel like every single sentence I'm saying is like mind-blowing, but like I'm not even giving you or myself a chance to process it, so I apologize, but like I just don't even. But finally, an arrest warrant was issued for Sheila Labarre on the 2nd of April. But obviously she was long gone, so they had a bit of a search on their hands. You know, she played it pretty smart. She cut and dyed her hair. She was going by a new name. But obviously due to the high profile of this case, the police knew her face pretty well. Like, she had been on the front page of every newspaper. Actually, sorry, the arrest warrant was issued on the 31st of March, but she was actually arrested, finally, on the 2nd of April. In another police interview, she claimed that she burnt that mattress because she slept on it with a paedophile. So I know I told you before that that bag of bones had eventually been identified to be Kenny, but I don't actually think those results were back at this point because they were questioning Sheila on his whereabouts. She claimed not to know anything about where he was. She denied ever harming him at all, but she also said that she didn't feel bad about his disappearance because she believed he was a paedophile. But she also was very helpful, you know? She offered the theory that maybe Kenny fell into the fire. I mean, the police are not stupid. So Sheila was arrested for the murder of Kenneth Countie and she was denied bail. She did plead guilty by reason of insanity and she was found guilty, but she was judged to be sane. So during Sheila's trial, it had come out that she had been able to convince Michael DeLoge and Kenneth Countie that they were pedophiles and that they had been victims of incest. It also became very clear that she had killed both men at different times on her farm. And then it also came out that Sheila believed she had died and come back to Earth as an angel with special powers on a mission to kill pedophiles. A forensic psychologist actually testified that it seemed like Sheila had a schizophrenic affect disorder or a delusional disorder that caused her to believe these men were pedophiles and to kill them. But like they weren't. Like I looked into it, I was like, well, what if she's right? Like, and they weren't. Like she was just like not all there. But like then she told another story where she claimed that Kenny's death was an accident and that she woke up one morning and he wasn't there. So she got out of bed and before she knew it, his hands were around her neck and he was choking her. And then obviously there was a bit of a struggle. They ended up in the bathroom and Kenny slipped and hit his head and died. So in that case, she's trying to pull it as like an accident, but also with a bit of self-defense in there, probably just to reduce her sentence. She said that when she realized he was dead, she burned him to give him a kind of Native American type funeral. But like going back to the pedophile story, one of the state psychiatrists actually testified that her behavior wasn't consistent with someone who believed they were an angel to kill pedophiles and stuff, because she actually was taking these men in. She was living with them, she was having sex with them, caring for them before eventually torturing and killing them. Like if she did believe that she was an angel and blah blah blah, she would have just killed them. She wouldn't have wasted all her time on the intimacy, sexual aspect of it. So there was just this whole mess of information. But essentially, it just came down to Sheila murdered 2 men and then tried to conceal her crimes and destroy evidence. So then finally, she got 2 life sentences without parole at the age of 49. But it doesn't even end there. In July of 2012, for some reason there was another search of Sheila's farm and they found 3 toes that did not belong to either Michael DeLoge or Kenneth Countie. So either Sheila had murdered somebody else or someone who had worked and lived there left without 3 of their toes. But pretty much nothing else ever came of that. I don't think they ever even found who these toes belonged to. My personal thoughts are, if someone used to live and work there and survived and lost 3 toes because of this woman, they're probably gonna follow this case pretty closely. And if they're doing that, then they would know that she's been locked up, so they're gonna be safe enough to come forward. But like, surely you would come forward and say, oh my god, they're my toes. Such a ridiculous statement, but obviously if somebody's already dead, they're not going to come forward, and that's probably what happened. Like I said, she had picked up Michael DeLoge from a homeless shelter, and that wasn't her only time there. Like, she used to kind of scout out young men there. And if they're in a homeless shelter, yes, they're vulnerable targets, but they also probably don't have anyone looking for them. You know, nobody's gonna come running if they disappear. And that is what I personally believe happened to those 1 or 2 men who seemed to vanish. It's a lot easier for her to get away with something when nobody's looking for the victim. Do you know, it really is upsetting when you realise that if she had been penalised for previous assaults and everything that she'd done in the past, Kenneth Countie and Michael DeLoge might still be alive today. But obviously that leads me to the end of this case. Sheila is still alive and serving her 2 life sentences. And I really hope it wasn't too confusing to follow. Like, I know there are a lot of kind of players and stuff in this one. Might have been a bit longer, I would imagine it is. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please give me a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and do turn on the notifications so you never miss an upload. With all the twists and turns in this case, I would love to know your thoughts on it. And like I said, if there's anything that you're unsure of or that wasn't clear, I'll happily clear that up for you in the comments. Just let me know. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.